In Genesis 40, we learn that Joseph was able to interpret dreams. He dreamt that the cupbearer would be released on 3 days and be restored back to his position. And he asked the cupbearer to help him out. Tell the Pharaoh, tell the king that I'm here so he could be free. And he interpreted the baker. And the baker, and in 3 days, on Pharaoh's birthday, the baker was dead, just like Pharaoh, just like Joseph told him. And the cupbearer returned back to his position, happy as can be, forgot all about Joseph. It took 2 years, 2 years for him to return back, according to 41. So let's read chapter 41 of Genesis. After 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile, and there came up and out of the Nile 7 sleek and fat cows, and they grazed in the reed grass. Then 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came out of the Nile after them, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. Verse 4. The ugly and thin cows ate up the 7 sleek and fat cows, and Pharaoh awoke. Then he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing in one stalk. Then 7 ears of thin and blighted by the east wind, sprouted after them. The thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump and fat ears. Pharaoh awoke, and it was a dream. In the morning his spirit was troubled, so he sent and called for the magician of Egypt and all his wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them to Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, I remember my fault today. Once Pharaoh was angry with his servant and put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captain of the guard. We dreamed on the same night, he and I, each having a dream with his own meaning. A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. When we told him, he interpreted our dream to us, giving an interpretation to each according to his dream. 13. As he interpreted to us, so it turned out. I was restored to my office, and the baker was hung. 14. Then Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was hurriedly brought out of the dungeon. When he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh, and Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. 16. Joseph answers Pharaoh, it is not I. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, in my dream, I was standing on the bank of the Nile, and 7 cows, fat and sleek, came up out of the Nile and feed on the reed grass. Then 7 other cows came up after them, poor, very ugly and thin. Never have I seen such ugly ones in all the land of Egypt. The thin and ugly cow ate up the first 7 fat cows. 21. But when they had eaten them, no one would have known that they had done so, for they were still as ugly as before. Then I awoke. 22. I fell asleep a second time, and I saw in my dream 7 ears of grain, full and good, growing on one stalk, and 7 ears withered thin, bladed by the east wind, sprouting after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. But when I told it to the magician, there was no one who could explain it to me. 25. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came out after them are 7 years, as are the 7 empty ears bleated by the east wind. There are 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh. God has shown to Pharaoh what he's about to do. 29. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. After them, there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land. The plenty will no longer be known in the land because of the famine that will follow, for it will be very grievous. And the doubting of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God. And the doubling, ooh, and the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing will be fixed by God. And God will shortly bring it about. 33. There, now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a man who is discerning and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseer over the land, and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plenteous years. Let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and lay up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food will be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to befall the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine. 37. The proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. Pharaoh said to his servant, can we find anyone else like this, one in whom is the Spirit of God? So Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only with regard to the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. 42. Remembering his signet ring from his hand, removing his signet ring from his hand, Pharaoh put it on Joseph's hand. He arrayed him in garment of fine lining, and put a gold chain around his neck. 43. He had him ride in the chariot of his second in command. And they cried out in front of him, bow the knee, though he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent, no one shall lift up hands or foot in all the land of Egypt. 45. Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zaphanat Pani, Zaphanah Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, as his wife. Though Joseph gained authority over the land of Egypt. 46. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh's king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 plenteous years, the earth produced abundantly. He gathered up all the food of the 7 years when there was plenty in the land of Egypt, and store up food in the city. He stored up in every city the food from the field around it. So Judah stored up grain in such abundance, like the sand of the sea, that he stopped consuming it. It was beyond measure. Verse 50. Before the years of famine came, Joseph had 2 sons, whom Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God had made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. The second he named Ephraim, for God had made me fruitful in the land of my misfortune. 53. The 7 years of plenty. The 7 years of plenty that prevailed in the land of Egypt comes to an end. And the 7 years of famine began to come. Just as Joseph had said, there was famine in every country, but throughout the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. What he said to do, what he said to you, do. And since the famine has spread over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptian, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the world came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine, because the famine becomes severe throughout the world. We gonna examine that, and we're gonna see the consequence of the famine as we continue to read, and how the consequence would lead to what happened at the end in the start of Exodus. Woo! You're gonna see. It's gonna be good. Okay. Verse 41. 1 to 57. Joseph interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh. This story marks the key turning point in Joseph's fortunes. His ability as a dream interpreter elevated him to second in command of all Egypt. In verse 1 to 7, this is the third of the three dream sequence in the Joseph story. The dreams again appear as a pair, one about cows in verse 2 to 4, and one about grain in verse 5 to 7. The Nile River that runs through the otherwise dry landscape is Egypt's primary source of water, fertile and life, in verse 1 to 4. In verse 14, Joseph's change of clothes marked major transition in his life throughout the story. According to Genesis 37, verse 23, 39, verse 2, and also 41, verse 42. In verse 32, Joseph explained why all the dreams have been doubled throughout the story. In Genesis 37, verse 5 through 11, Genesis 40, verse 5 to 23, and Genesis 41, verse 1 to 36. Go back and listen to the stories that I read to you before. It will help you understand. The doubling demonstrates that God had predetermined the event that are soon to happen. In verse 42, Pharaoh's signet ring as the Pharaoh's official stamp. Pharaoh's signet ring has Pharaoh's official stamp or signature. He gave it to Pharaoh. He gave it to Joseph as a sign of his elevation to power as Joseph's representative. Joseph's new garment of fine linen marked yet another transition in his life. In verse 14. Let me take you back to verse 238, chapter 38, when Judah also gave Tamar his signet ring. It was like a signature of the family of who he was. He gave her the ring, but not in the same condition. But the ring was able to have Tamar when she became pregnant with Judah's child, when they was accusing her of being a harlot. It was because of the ring that Tamar was able to elevate herself. The rings that Pharaoh gave to Joseph was a ring of authority. It's a ring of power to show that he is in charge. Okay? Joseph's new garment of fine linen marked yet another transition in his life, according to verse 14. In verse 51 to 52, the true name of Joseph's son, Manasseh, making to forget, and Ephraim to be fruitful, celebrate Joseph's elevation out of slavery and prison. The material benefits of providing food in the midst of famine throughout the world is another example of the fulfillment of the promise to Abraham that his family would be a blessing to all the families of the earth. In Genesis 12, verse 3, the verse also provides a transition to the famine in Canaan and explain why Joseph's brother will come to Egypt seeking food. And when Joseph's brother comes seeking food, you're going to see how the dream that he had about the stock bowing down to him and the stars bowing down to him, and how the brother becomes so jealous to the point even the father was like, I gotta watch Joseph because he had dreams and he know how God speak. You're gonna see as you follow along with me. We're on 41. May God bless you. May God use you and give you the wisdom and give you the guidance as you remain humble and righteous in front of God. May your family be blessed. May your home be blessed. May you lack nothing. May no famine touch you. In Jesus' name, peace. May the grace of God be with you. Share, like this page, and help us spread the word throughout the four quarters of the earth. Like Jesus said, before he comes, all the four corners will know about him. Why don't you share it so it could start spreading? Amen. Peace. May the peace of God and the love of God be with you. Shalom.